You can be calm for 10 minutes and still lose the state in 10 seconds. The phone lights up, the message is not there, and the old story rushes back like it owns the room. A number changes, a door closes, a tone feels colder, and suddenly the visible world seems to have more authority than imagination. That is the moment most people never study. They study desire. They study affirmations. They study beautiful scenes before sleep, but they do not study the instant when evidence knocks and asks who is in charge. The old self wants to answer quickly. It wants to explain, defend, chase, check, refresh, and rehearse disaster. But what if the delay is not the test? What if the test is the speed at which the listener abandons the person they just claimed to be? What if the outside event is not asking for panic, but offering a place to practice dominion? The world does not need an immediate emotional vote. A circumstance can be seen without being crowned. A fact can be received without being made final. A sensation can move through the body without becoming the master. The quiet person who can do that becomes difficult to move. They stop treating every shadow as a verdict. They stop asking the scene to comfort them before they occupy the state. And in that pause, the old story begins to lose its throne. This episode explores Neville Goddard's law of assumption through modern host-led commentary, especially the moment when the visible world appears to contradict the assumed state. Neville's influence remains powerful because his work places imagination, identity, and consciousness at the center of experience. The practical challenge is not simply imagining once. The challenge is remaining faithful to the chosen identity when the senses offer a different report. That does not mean denying facts, avoiding responsibilities, or pretending pain feels pleasant. It means refusing to let every fact define the self who is looking at it. The law of assumption is often treated like a method for getting one result, but a more useful interpretation is that assumption is the practice of assigning identity before evidence arrives. The listener chooses the state from which they will think, speak inwardly, and respond. Reacting to the 3D is not merely having feelings. It is letting the visible arrangement decide who the listener is. If a conversation is cold, the old state says, I am unwanted. If money is delayed, the old state says, I am unsafe. If a door closes, the old state says, I am rejected. The event is small compared with the identity that gets attached to it. Here is the first distinction. A circumstance may be real as an appearance, but it does not have to be final as an identity. The letter may be on the table. The silence may be on the phone. The account may show the number it shows. The body may feel tight. None of those appearances has permission to name the inner self unless the listener gives that permission. The world can say there is a delay. It cannot say the listener is defeated. The world can say there is no reply yet. It cannot say the listener is unloved. The world can say a result is incomplete. It cannot say the fulfilled state is unavailable. Imagine Mara, who has been practicing a new assumption around being chosen and respected. She has imagined a simple scene of relief. She has felt, for a few minutes, the quiet dignity of someone who is no longer chasing proof. The next afternoon, she opens her phone and sees no message from the person she expected to hear from. Immediately, her chest tightens. Her mind begins collecting evidence. Maybe the silence means disinterest. Maybe yesterday's calm was foolish. Maybe she should send another message with perfect wording. In the old state, silence becomes a courtroom. Every second without a reply becomes a witness against her. Now Mara practices differently. She does not force herself to feel instantly wonderful. She does not argue with the phone. She places it down and names the actual event with clean language. There is no message right now. Then she separates that event from identity. No message right now does not mean I am unwanted. She breathes and asks a better question. Who would I be if I already knew I was chosen, respected, and safe? Not what would I type. Not how would I manipulate the moment. Who would I be? That question moves her out of reaction and into assumption. The tremor may remain in the body, but the tremor is no longer commander. Calm is often misunderstood. Calm is not the absence of sensation. Calm is the refusal to give sensation the throne. The old state can rise like weather and still not become government. A person can feel fear and still choose not to rehearse the feared ending. A person can notice disappointment and still not make disappointment into prophecy. A person can see the outside world and still return inwardly to the end they have selected. That is discipline in the Neville sense. Loyalty to the inner state without pressure, performance, or frantic force. So far, the teaching is not that appearances vanish when ignored. The teaching is that appearances lose their power to name the self. The visible world may bring a delay, a silence, a bill, a tense meeting, or an unanswered question. The old habit turns each one into a verdict. The new practice turns each one into a place of assumption. The decisive second is usually not during a peaceful meditation. It is the second after the world seems to disagree. The first real-time practice is clean naming. When something happens, describe only what happened. Do not add a biography. Do not add a prediction. Do not add a sentence about who you are. Clean naming removes the poison from the fact. It keeps the mind from turning a small appearance into a complete identity. The listener may still need to act, but action becomes clearer when the fact is not wrapped in doom. Consider a lower bank number. The clean name is, the number is lower than preferred today. The old name is, I never get ahead. The assumed state answer is, I am learning order and provision from a steadier state. The difference may seem subtle, but the state feels it immediately. One sentence builds a prison around the event. The other sentence leaves the listener inwardly free enough to choose. This is not wordplay. It is the discipline of refusing to let inner speech become an unconscious law. Consider a delayed reply. The clean name is, there is no reply right now. The old name is, I am being ignored. The assumed state answer is, I remain chosen before evidence answers. The difference may seem subtle, but the state feels it immediately. One sentence builds a prison around the event. The other sentence leaves the listener inwardly free enough to choose. This is not wordplay. It is the discipline of refusing to let inner speech become an unconscious law. Consider a sharp tone. The clean name is, that person used a sharp tone. The old name is, nobody respects me. The assumed state answer is, my dignity is not borrowed from their mood. The difference may seem subtle, but the state feels it immediately. One sentence builds a prison around the event. The other sentence leaves the listener inwardly free enough to choose. This is not wordplay. It is the discipline of refusing to let inner speech become an unconscious law. Consider a changed plan. The clean name is, the plan changed. The old name is, things never work for me. The assumed state answer is, I can meet change without surrendering identity. The difference may seem subtle, but the state feels it immediately. One sentence builds a prison around the event. The other sentence leaves the listener inwardly free enough to choose. This is not wordplay. It is the discipline of refusing to let inner speech become an unconscious law. Consider an unanswered email. The clean name is, the email is unanswered for now. The old name is, the door is closed. The assumed state answer is, the right door is still approached from calm authority. The difference may seem subtle, but the state feels it immediately. One sentence builds a prison around the event. The other sentence leaves the listener inwardly free enough to choose. This is not wordplay. It is the discipline of refusing to let inner speech become an unconscious law. Consider a repeated memory. The clean name is, the memory is active tonight. The old name is, the past is still ruling me. The assumed state answer is, I can revise my relation to this memory now. The difference may seem subtle, but the state feels it immediately. One sentence builds a prison around the event. The other sentence leaves the listener inwardly free enough to choose. This is not wordplay. It is the discipline of refusing to let inner speech become an unconscious law. Inner speech is not background noise in this framework. It is the private atmosphere in which the state is rehearsed. The listener may not say the old sentence aloud, but they may repeat it inwardly all afternoon. Of course this happened. Nothing works. No one chooses me. I am always behind. Those sentences turn imagination against the desired state. The person is not suffering merely because they saw an obstacle. They are suffering because the obstacle became the narrator. Living in the end can be understood here as living from the identity that belongs to the fulfilled answer, not waiting for the answer to grant identity. Living in the end does not mean walking around in fantasy. It means responding from the chosen state before the world has rearranged itself. The fulfilled person may still send an email, make a call, pay attention, or take practical action, but the action is not born from panic. It is born from identity. Panic tries to wrestle a result from the world. Identity acts because it is already standing somewhere inwardly. Try this with one ordinary trigger. Imagine it appearing again. Before changing the scene, pause. Hear the old sentence that usually follows it. Do not fight the sentence. Replace its authority. Say inwardly, that is the old state speaking. Then answer from the assumed state with one clean sentence. I remain the one who is chosen. I remain the one who is secure. I remain the one whose life is arranging itself in order. Choose a sentence that fits the aim and make it simple enough to remember under pressure. This practice is not a substitute for wise action, professional support, financial planning, medical care, legal advice, or honest communication when those are needed. It is an inner discipline for keeping circumstances from turning into identity. The listener still lives responsibly. Bills are handled. Boundaries are spoken. Messages are sent when appropriate. Support is sought when needed. The difference is that practical action is no longer performed from helplessness. It is performed from steadiness. Daniel offers another example. He is waiting for a response about work. He has been imagining himself as valued, useful, and well-placed. Then an email arrives with a delay. The old Daniel reads delay as rejection. He opens 10 tabs, compares himself to strangers, and starts mentally arguing with people who have not said no. His evening disappears into a case for failure. This time he notices the first spark. He says, delay is not definition. He closes the extra tabs. He writes one next practical step for tomorrow. Then he spends 90 seconds imagining sitting at his desk with relief in his shoulders, saying, the right placement is clear now. Assumption becomes weaker when it is used only as emergency medicine. Many people enter the fulfilled state only after they have panicked for hours. They imagine from exhaustion, then wonder why the old state returns quickly. The aim is to become familiar with the state before emergency. Morning is useful for this. Before checking messages, before scanning problems, before letting the day tell the listener who they are, pause and choose the inner posture. Ask, from what state will this day be met? A short morning practice is enough. First minute, notice the worries that want to define the day. Second minute, choose the fulfilled identity in one sentence. Third minute, imagine one ordinary action being done from that identity, not a grand miracle. Making coffee as someone secure, walking into work as someone valued, opening the phone as someone who does not bow to absence, paying a bill as someone learning order instead of proving doom. The ordinary action is important because states are lived in ordinary movements. The practice has now moved from theory into the small hinges of the day. Clean naming keeps facts from becoming verdicts. Inner speech keeps the state alive when no one else can hear it. Morning assumption gives the day an identity before the day offers evidence. But there is a deeper layer. The body often reacts before the mind has chosen. Many listeners do not lose the state in thought first. They lose it in sensation. When the body shows a tight chest, do not make an enemy of it. The sensation is not proof that the assumption failed. It may be the residue of an old state trying to protect itself. Say inwardly, a sensation is moving through me, but it is not deciding for me. Then let security have a physical signature. The shoulders drop and the breath lengthens. The body becomes a place where the new state is practiced, not a battlefield against fear. When the body shows a hot face, do not make an enemy of it. The sensation is not proof that the assumption failed. It may be the residue of an old state trying to protect itself. Say inwardly, a sensation is moving through me, but it is not deciding for me. Then let respect have a physical signature. The jaw unclenches and the eyes soften. The body becomes a place where the new state is practiced, not a battlefield against fear. When the body shows a sinking stomach, do not make an enemy of it. The sensation is not proof that the assumption failed. It may be the residue of an old state trying to protect itself. Say inwardly, a sensation is moving through me, but it is not deciding for me. Then let provision have a physical signature. The feet press into the floor and the body remembers support. The body becomes a place where the new state is practiced, not a battlefield against fear. When the body shows a restless hands, do not make an enemy of it. The sensation is not proof that the assumption failed. It may be the residue of an old state trying to protect itself. Say inwardly, a sensation is moving through me, but it is not deciding for me. Then let chosen calm have a physical signature. The hands become still and no longer reach for proof. The body becomes a place where the new state is practiced, not a battlefield against fear. Small practices repeated at the exact moment of reaction change the state more deeply than dramatic practices performed only when life is quiet. The state is not merely an idea. It is a way of occupying the body, speaking inwardly, interpreting events, and choosing action. When those four begin to agree, the old reaction has less room to rule. The listener may still be moved, but they are no longer dragged. One useful question is, what would stop if the state were trusted? This exposes the rituals of fear. Maybe the listener would stop checking whether someone viewed a story. Maybe they would stop replaying an insult. Maybe they would stop turning every small bill into a future catastrophe. Maybe they would stop asking 5 friends to vote on their worth. Maybe they would stop refreshing the inbox every 3 minutes. The answer reveals where the old state still receives worship. Then ask the second question, what calm action belongs to the assumed end? This prevents passivity. The fulfilled state is not numb. It can be intelligent, warm, direct, organized, and courageous. It may make a budget without terror. It may send one honest message without begging. It may rest instead of chasing. It may prepare instead of spiraling. It may forgive inwardly without permitting poor treatment outwardly. Living in the end includes behavior, but behavior follows identity instead of trying to purchase it. Neville's influence becomes practical when imagination is understood as more than pictures behind closed eyes. Imagination is also the meaning assigned to the present moment. 2 people can see the same delay. One imagines rejection, the other imagines arrangement. 2 people can hear the same criticism. One imagines humiliation. The other imagines refinement without loss of worth. 2 people can face the same temporary shortage. One imagines lifelong lack. The other imagines a season requiring order and a new state of provision. The aim is not forced positivity. Forced positivity often becomes another form of fear. The aim is truthful inner leadership. The listener can say, "This hurts," and still not surrender identity. They can say, "This is uncertain," and still not rehearse ruin. They can say, "I need support," and still not call themselves powerless. The fulfilled state is not a mask pasted over distress. It is a deeper place from which distress is met. Now practice a short imaginal correction. Choose one scene from today where the reaction was stronger than desired. See it briefly, not to punish yourself, but to locate the hinge. Notice the moment the old identity took over. Now replay only 10 seconds. In the replay, the event happens again, but you remain inwardly seated. Your breath slows, your eyes soften, your inner sentence changes. You say, "This appearance does not name me." Then imagine taking one calm action or no action at all, whichever expresses the fulfilled state. This is revision used as a present state practice. It is not pretending the day never happened. It is withdrawing creative loyalty from the old reaction. When a moment of panic is revised into a moment of steadiness, the inner self learns a new path. The next time a similar appearance arrives, the old state may still appear, but it will not seem like the only road. There is also a relationship layer. Many listeners react most strongly when another person becomes the mirror. A delayed reply, a changed tone, a forgotten promise, or a cold look can feel like a spiritual emergency. Everyone is you pushed out can be handled safely as a perspective exercise. Ask, what am I assuming about myself in this interaction? Am I entering as wanted or as needy? Am I listening as respected or as already dismissed? Am I responding from love or from a courtroom? This keeps the practice inward without turning it into blame. If a boundary is needed, the fulfilled state can speak it. If distance is needed, the fulfilled state can take it. If honesty is needed, the fulfilled state can offer it. Inner assumption should not be used to excuse poor treatment or avoid necessary decisions. It should clarify the self from which decisions are made. The chosen person may choose silence. The respected person may leave a conversation. The secure person may stop bargaining with confusion. That is not reaction. That is identity. Notice the pattern now. The phone, the bill, the tone, the delay, and the visible event may seem to demand panic. Clean naming, inner speech, morning assumption, body steadiness, revision, and relationship interpretation all point to one discipline. The world may report, but it does not reign. The final practice gathers this into a simple daily method that can be used whenever the senses seem louder than imagination. The daily method has 5 steps. First, name the appearance cleanly. Second, refuse the identity it tries to attach. Third, choose the fulfilled state sentence. Fourth, let the body express that sentence. Fifth, take the next practical action from the new state. This can be done in under 2 minutes. It can be done in a hallway, at a desk, in a car before walking inside, or at night before sleep. The power is not in complexity. The power is in returning before the old state builds a house. Speak it slowly, inwardly. This happened. It does not tell me who I am. The state I choose is available inwardly now. My body can remember it now. My next action will come from that state. That is enough. If the mind demands proof, let the proof be the changed response. If the old story demands hours of attention, give it a clean sentence and no throne. If the world asks for panic, answer with presence. Return to Mara one last time. She sees the silent phone 2 days later. The old sensation appears, but this time it does not become a movie. She names it. No message right now. She refuses the identity. That does not make me unwanted. She chooses the state. I am loved, valued, and calm in myself. Her shoulders release. She makes dinner, not as a tactic, but as a person who has returned to herself. Later, she may communicate honestly if needed, but the silence no longer gets to become her God. One more nightly reflection can seal the practice. Ask where the day asked you to panic and where you successfully paused. Do not look only for perfect victories. A 2-second pause is evidence of a new state learning to stand. A cleaner sentence is evidence. One less refresh of the phone is evidence. One practical action taken without collapse is evidence. These small signs matter because identity is trained through repetition, not spectacle. If the listener wants a simple phrase, use this. The appearance is allowed to be seen, but it is not allowed to be sovereign. That phrase keeps perception honest and authority inward. It does not make the world an enemy. It simply places the world in the role of report rather than ruler. From there, the assumed state can breathe. The old state may complain that this is too simple. It often prefers drama because drama feels familiar. but a state changes through small acts of allegiance. Each time the listener refuses to turn an event into a self, the old state loses repetition. Each time the listener returns to the fulfilled identity, the new state gains a path. No honest teacher can promise that one inner shift will force a specific person, payment, email, or event to arrive on command. Life includes other people, timing, systems, and practical responsibilities. What can be practiced is the state from which the listener lives, interprets, chooses, and acts. That practice may influence decisions, perception, confidence, relational patterns, and opportunities. It can also bring peace where panic used to rule. Let that be enough to begin. A useful modern test is the moment before checking for proof. The listener reaches for the phone, the inbox, the tracking number, the bank balance, or the reply. The hand moves before awareness arrives. In that instant, pause. Ask what state is reaching. If lack is reaching, the check will not satisfy for long. If the fulfilled state is reaching, the check becomes information rather than judgment. This small pause returns authority to imagination before the senses take the chair. Living in the end can be misunderstood as ignoring circumstances. A stronger interpretation is that the listener stops letting circumstances decide identity. If the bill exists, handle it. If the conversation is needed, have it. If a skill must be learned, learn it. But do these things as the person who is provided for, chosen, guided, and capable. The action may look the same from outside. Inside, it is completely different. It comes from state rather than emergency. There is also a social version of reacting to the 3D. Someone changes tone, and the listener immediately becomes the abandoned self. Someone praises them, and they become briefly safe. Someone delays, and they become powerless. This makes identity a puppet of other people's moods. Neville's idea of assumption can be used as a return to authorship. The listener may still notice tone, praise, and delay, but they no longer hand over the pen. The practice is not to become emotionless. Feelings may rise, the body may tighten, tears may come. The fulfilled state is not a mask, it is the deeper decision underneath the weather. The listener can say, "I feel fear moving, and I still choose the identity of being supported." That sentence honors the body without obeying every alarm. Gradually, the alarm learns that it is not the ruler. A useful modern test is the moment before checking for proof. The listener reaches for the phone, the inbox, the tracking number, the bank balance, or the reply. The hand moves before awareness arrives. In that instant, pause. Ask what state is reaching. If lack is reaching, the check will not satisfy for long. If the fulfilled state is reaching, the check becomes information rather than judgment. This small pause returns authority to imagination before the senses take the chair. In this additional application, the same principle is practiced in a new ordinary moment, so the listener hears the idea as lived discipline rather than repeated phrasing. Living in the end can be misunderstood as ignoring circumstances. A stronger interpretation is that the listener stops letting circumstances decide identity. If the bill exists, handle it. If the conversation is needed, have it. If a skill must be learned, learn it. But do these things as the person who is provided for, chosen, guided, and capable. The action may look the same from outside. Inside, it is completely different. It comes from state rather than emergency. In this additional application, the same principle is practiced in a new ordinary moment, so the listener hears the idea as lived discipline rather than repeated phrasing. There is also a social version of reacting to the 3D. Someone changes tone, and the listener immediately becomes the abandoned self. Someone praises them, and they become briefly safe. Someone delays, and they become powerless. This makes identity a puppet of other people's moods. Neville's idea of assumption can be used as a return to authorship. The listener may still notice tone, praise, and delay, but they no longer hand over the pen. In this additional application, the The same principle is practiced in a new ordinary moment, so the listener hears the idea as lived discipline rather than repeated phrasing. The practice is not to become emotionless. Feelings may rise. The body may tighten. Tears may come. The fulfilled state is not a mask. It is the deeper decision underneath the weather. The listener can say, "I feel fear moving, and I still choose the identity of being supported." That sentence honors the body without obeying every alarm. Gradually, the alarm learns that it is not the ruler. In this additional application, the same principle is practiced in a new ordinary moment, so the listener hears the idea as lived discipline rather than repeated phrasing. A first test of the assumed state comes at the kitchen table. The listener sees the appearance, but pauses before accepting the identity that appearance suggests. Instead of saying, "This means I am failing," the listener says, "This is a report and not a ruler." Then one action is taken from the fulfilled state. The discipline is small, but it changes authorship. The senses are allowed to speak, yet imagination keeps the final authority. A second test of the assumed state comes before opening the phone. The listener sees the appearance, but pauses before accepting the identity that appearance suggests. Instead of saying, "This means I am failing," the listener says, "This is a report and not a ruler." Then one action is taken from the fulfilled state. The discipline is small, but it changes authorship. The senses are allowed to speak, yet imagination keeps the final authority. A third test of the assumed state comes while walking to the car. The listener sees the appearance, but pauses before accepting the identity that appearance suggests. Instead of saying, "This means I am failing," the listener says, "This is a report and not a ruler." Then one action is taken from the fulfilled state. The discipline is small, but it changes authorship. The senses are allowed to speak, yet imagination keeps the final authority. Reacting to the 3D is not seeing the world. It is surrendering authorship to it. The fulfilled person still sees clearly. They simply do not kneel before every appearance. They do not let a temporary report become a permanent self. They return inwardly, not as escape, but as command. Tonight, choose one appearance that has been naming you. Remove its title. Give it only its clean name. Then occupy the state you would have occupied if the answer were already settled. Return to this lesson until you can test it in imagination and prove it in experience.